Imagine you walk up to a wild animal, and it doesn't run. You've met 1,000 animals in your life. Every single one of them knew the rule. See a human, freeze, flee. A squirrel shoots up a tree. A bird scatters off the grass. A deer is gone before you even finish the thought. That fear feels older than language. It feels like it's written into the blood of every living thing on Earth. But on a few hidden corners of this planet, that rule was never written. There are animals that look you dead in the eye and feel nothing. No fear, no alarm, no urge to run, because to them, you are not a predator. You are furniture. A giant tortoise that won't lift its head as you stand right over it. A small, furry creature that hops up to your feet and grins at you. A bird that lands on your shoulder just to study your face. An animal that has no idea you could erase its entire species in a single afternoon. Most people think these animals are just friendly, tame, gentle, born nice, but that's not it at all. The truth is much colder than that. Charles Darwin saw it first almost 200 years ago. He stepped onto a volcanic island in the Pacific, and the animals just let him walk among them. He could push a hawk off a branch with the barrel of his gun. He could lean down and touch birds that had never learned to flee. He wrote it all down, baffled. Today, scientists finally have a name for what he saw. They call it island tameness. These 5 animals are not your friends. They are something far rarer than that. They are a window into a world that existed before us. And by the end of this, you'll understand one terrifying truth. The fearless animals are not the exception. They are simply the ones who haven't learned what you are. So stay till the end, because the last part of this isn't really about them at all. It's about you. So let's start where Darwin started. The Galápagos Islands, hundreds of miles from the nearest mainland. Out here lives a black, spiny creature called the marine iguana. It looks like a tiny dragon that crawled out of the sea. And you can walk right up to it. It won't move. It won't even tense its body. You could crouch down inches from its face. And it will just keep staring out at the waves, sneezing salt into the wind. For a long time, people assumed the iguana was simply stupid. But in 2007, researchers in the Galápagos ran a careful test. They studied marine iguanas at 3 different sites. At one site, there had never been a single predator. At another, feral dogs had recently shown up from a nearby town. Then they measured one specific thing: flight distance. How close can you get before the animal finally runs? The iguanas that grew up with no predators barely reacted at all. You could practically step over them. But the iguanas living near those dogs, they ran early. They ran scared. Same species, same island chain. One group had learned fear, the other group never had a reason to. And there it is, the secret hiding underneath this entire video. Fear is not something animals are born with. It's something the world teaches them. No teacher, no lesson, no fear. The marine iguana was simply never taught. So to this day, it sees a human and feels absolutely nothing. But here's where it gets stranger, because this isn't just one weird lizard on one weird island. In 2014, scientists decided to test Darwin's old hunch properly. They compared 66 different lizard species, some from islands, some from the mainland. And the pattern that came back was almost perfect. The farther an island sat from the mainland, the tamer its animals became. The more cut off the home, the less fear was left. Darwin's idea wasn't just a traveler's story, it was a law of nature. Now let's meet the second animal, and this one is going to make you smile. On a tiny island off the coast of Australia lives the quokka. It's about the size of a house cat. It hops around like a miniature kangaroo, and it has become world famous for one single reason. It always looks like it's smiling. People call it the happiest animal on Earth. Tourists lie flat on the ground to take selfies with it, and the quokka just hops right up to them. Close enough to touch, curious, calm, completely unbothered. But here's the truth nobody prints on the postcard. That smile is a lie. The quokka isn't grinning because it's full of joy. The shape of its face just naturally curves upward that way. And the real reason it walks straight up to a total stranger is the exact same reason as the iguana. Its island has had almost no predators for thousands of years. When Dutch sailors first found it in 1696, they didn't even recognize it. They thought the island was crawling with giant rats. They named the place Rat's Nest. That's how unbothered these creatures were. Nothing had ever hunted them here, so nothing in the quokka's mind says danger when it sees you. It's not brave, it's not friendly. It simply has no concept of being prey. Which brings us to the third animal. And for this one, we travel to the coldest place on the planet, Antarctica, out on the endless ice-live colonies of penguins. And if you've ever seen the footage, you know exactly what they do. A human in a giant red coat walks across the snow, and the penguins come waddling right over. They peck at your boots, they tilt their heads to inspect you. Some of them will even try to follow you. Why? Because in Antarctica, nothing hunts a penguin on land. Picture yourself standing on that ice. Everything that wants to kill a penguin lives in the water. Leopard seals, orcas. So the penguin's entire fear system is built for the sea, not the shore. The moment it's standing on solid ice, its guard drops completely. And to that penguin, you are not a monster. You're just a strange, enormous penguin that walks a little funny. So far, this all sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Animals that trust us. Creatures living in little paradises with no fear at all. But here's where the whole story turns dark. Because being fearless in a world with no monsters is a beautiful gift, and being fearless the moment a monster finally arrives is a death sentence, which brings us to the fourth animal. Back to the Galápagos, to the giant tortoise. These creatures can weigh over 400 pounds. They can live for more than 100 years. Darwin himself climbed onto their backs and rode them across the rocks, and they have no fear of anything, including you. For most of their history, that was perfectly fine. Then, the ships came. In the 1700s and 1800s, sailors discovered something about these tortoises. They could survive for months without any food or water, which meant a single tortoise was fresh meat that never spoiled at sea. So the sailors carried them off by the thousands. By some estimates, more than 100,000 of them, stacked alive in the dark holds of the ships. And here's the part that should make your skin crawl. The tortoises never fought back. They never ran. They never even tried, because they had no instinct to. The same gentle fearlessness that made them so peaceful for millions of years made them effortless to wipe out. Entire kinds of tortoise vanished from certain islands, not because they were weak, but because nobody had ever taught them to be afraid. And no animal tells this story better than the fifth one, the dodo. You've heard the name your whole life, dead as a dodo. But almost nobody actually knows why it died. The dodo lived on a single island, Mauritius, out in the Indian Ocean. It had no predators for millions of years. So slowly, it stopped flying. It built its nests right on the open ground, and it felt no fear of anything that moved. Then, around the year 1600, Dutch ships arrived, and the dodos did exactly what every fearless island animal does. They walked straight up to the sailors. They didn't flee, they didn't hide, they didn't fight. But the ships didn't come alone. They brought pigs, they brought rats, they brought dogs, and those animals devoured the eggs sitting unprotected on the ground. Within just a few decades, the dodo was gone, forever. A bird that had survived for millions of years, erased in less than a single human lifetime. Its only crime was that it had never learned how to run. So now you've met all five: the iguana, the quokka, the penguin, the tortoise, the dodo. And it's easy to think they're just rare exceptions, a handful of strange, unlucky creatures in faraway places. But here's the part that flips this entire video on its head. Because scientists started asking a much darker question. If fear of humans is something learned, then exactly how afraid is the rest of the world of us? And in 2023, one team ran one of the most chilling experiments in modern wildlife science. They went to one of the wildest places left on Earth, the Greater Kruger region in South Africa, home to one of the largest lion populations on the entire planet. Lions are the scariest land predator most animals will ever face, so the scientists hid speakers near the watering holes, and they waited for the animals to come down and drink. Then they played sounds, sometimes the snarls and growls of lions, sometimes just the sound of human beings, calmly talking. Normal voices, no shouting, no weapons, just people, quietly speaking. They filmed how 19 different species reacted: elephants, giraffes, leopards, rhinos, zebras. By the end, they had over 15,000 recordings, and the results stopped them cold. The animals were twice as likely to run from human voices than from lions. Nearly 95% of the species feared us more. They abandoned the water 40% faster the moment they heard us. Let that sink in for a second. These animals live shoulder to shoulder with lions every single day of their lives. And still, the most terrifying sound in their entire world was the sound of a human quietly talking. The scientists gave us a name for it. They called us the super predator. And it makes a brutal kind of sense, because across the whole planet, humans kill other animals at a higher rate than any hunter alive. Not lions, not wolves, not sharks, us. We are, measurably, the most dangerous animal that has ever existed. So now look back at those 5 fearless creatures. Suddenly they don't seem so lucky anymore. The quokka's smile, the penguin waddling at your boots, the iguana staring calmly out to sea. That was never trust. That is the face of an animal that simply hasn't met us yet. And that's the truth that should stay with you tonight. Almost every wild thing alive already knows what you are. Generations of them learned it the hardest possible way. The fear in a fleeing deer, the panic in a scattering flock, the bolt of a fox into the brush, all of it has your fingerprints on it. We didn't just spread across the earth, we rewrote the instincts of nearly every creature on it. The fearless animals aren't a happy accident. They are the last few who haven't been taught the lesson. They are living memories, a snapshot of what this entire planet once looked like before one species walked out of Africa and became the thing everything else learned to fear. You've never hunted anything in your life. You might not even hurt a fly, but to almost every animal on Earth, you are the monster their ancestors warned them about, and the ones that still walk up to you calm and unafraid. They're not fearless because the world is safe. They're fearless because nobody has told them yet, and somewhere out there on a few quiet islands. The very last of them are still smiling.